G'day. So the common thing is to look at them and keep complaining. And I've pointed out very clearly criminal actions that have taken place. And I have spoken about very specific names relative to those actions. You all sit on your hands expecting someone to fix it for you. So today we're going to have a look at another type of video, something that actually affects every single one of you, something that should be the reason for you to get off your hands and start looking at the problem that this government has created upon you. Anthony Albanese and his cohorts in the Federal Executive Council are directly responsible for this. And it affects every single Australian from about 18 up to the end of your life. And if you're 18 today, you face the future of this for the next 70 years. Your working life, your rent-paying life. So we're going to have a look at a video here. I'm going to go back to a microphone. We're going to discuss another video. But what I want you to be aware of today is that it's the government that did this to you on purpose. On purpose. Albanese immigrated more than the Indigenous Aborigine population in the last 12 to 18 months, while promising the Aborigines the land under your feet and calling it welcome to country, taking everything from the greater population, using a minority population to undermine everyone, to use that Aboriginal population to get mining interests on the ground where before they were national parks, where before they were private Crown lands, now private and in the hands of contracts for mining deals. Your country is a pit mine to people like the Federal Executive Council. And they have created, on purpose, in a forced industrial revolution where they screw everyone, including the Aborigine, into nothing. Into nothing. They promise all the land to all these different interests to undermine the country. And your land titles, as I keep speaking about, having discovered what I discovered back in 2010 in a server, in a council, might have something to do with what's going on around you. So let's have a look at a very big problem that you all face.
I call the member for Longman.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Recently I had a community forum in the Longman electorate around homelessness and housing affordability, which is as bad as I've ever seen it.
Ooh, the ugly subject of kicking Australians out of their homes. What we're going to see here is some statistics and some tabling before the Queensland Parliament in relation to homelessness. Homelessness of general Australian people because of the actions that we have spoken about. So let's listen in, and as before, we'll go over it as we go through it.
Like many communities around the country, there are so many people sleeping in parks, on benches and in tent cities that have sprung up.
Now, let's be blatantly honest. Having moved around Australia and seen all different communities, probably more than this politician says he's even done. And this country is falling to the gutter. There are homeless people in large numbers all across this country living in cars. You can see this by going back a few years, and it was mainstream media news that families with children were living in their cars. This is a direct responsibility of a government and a military like Angus Campbell that is supposed to ensure the safety and security of this country and the people within it. This is the direct responsibility of the Federal Executive Council, which includes every Prime Minister going back as far as they are alive, and every Governor General going back as far as they are alive. And this integrates the military into the government. This is the responsibility house, the Federal Executive Council leaning on the Prime Minister and Cabinet after they merged the Department of Prime Minister and the Department of Cabinet back in 1971, making it the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet. This is a direct responsibility of this single branch of government, which is separate to the Senate and the House of Representatives. This means that your House of Representatives and Senators have had no say on anything that's going on because Albo is treating this as if it's his game, being given to him by some command behind him. So when we look at Angus Campbell sitting there looking for the ace card up his sleeve, there's someone else behind him holding that ace card because he doesn't have it. So with immigration reaching over the entire Aboriginal population, and only a third of those people built new homes, what happens to the other 2/3 of those immigrants? While during lockdown, this government caused you to lose all of your jobs, shut down all of your businesses, lose all of your income, and force you into this poverty. And it is poverty. So we can't look at it any other way. The fact that they're negating around using the word poverty for a greater population of the state of Queensland, in this instance being the Queensland Parliament, is very, very clear in that they're not willing to tell you the real state of affairs that's occurring across your country for Australians, while immigration takes your place. This is because it's a money machine and there is no loyalty or honour in them upholding your constitution. This is a direct problem when they serve moneylenders and not the blessing of Almighty God, giving you foundation in that constitution. It becomes very clear when we start talking about living in cars and then living in parks and now tent cities. So this proud fact that they've created a tent city by their own means to now come along and nanny it seems to be quite appropriate. So let's listen on.
Plus, there has been a massive uplift in couch surfing, which is certainly not as visible as the other cohorts I've already mentioned.
Kind of evil in a way, because this is where they detract from you actually having a family or being a family and being a family unit and having a father that has the power to make decisions. You're all couch surfers, surfing those waves of finance on that stock market, right? You're all couch surfers, couch potato surfers? Or have they manipulated a market so that you can't play? And that's a direct accusation in that a market has been manipulated so you can't play. So when we look at this is a lot greater than skipping over the top of reality like they always seem to do. So let's get real here. People are sharing homes in this country because they can't afford to live by themselves. If you go backwards in time, now I'll just put my own history on the table. I rented an entire double-bedroom unit back in Surfers Paradise when I was merely a teenager for $160 a week. It was very easily affordable and maintainable and furnishable. And then as time went on, it became very difficult to maintain things as the cost of living increased savagely. Rent in this economy went from $160 to $1,500 a week. So if you wanted to go and rent the same apartment today, you're nearing $2,000 a week for what I was living in for $160. And that's the reality that you all need to face. One could ask this minister how many homes he might own. Does he rent them out? What kind of people does he rent them to? Does he allow immigration to overtake the population? Because here we don't talk about vilification. So now when we look at vilification, one could ask, are the ministers themselves in that act against Australians when they declare to be on the front line with their frontline responders, having shut down your emergency services?
The forum was attended by concerned community members and organisations that either have empathy or are physically involved in assisting people who are experiencing difficulty when it comes to housing. The format was a panel that included a local real estate agent, Karen George from Richardson and Wrench, an organisation that provides meals and groceries to the homeless called, for those doing it tough, called Eat for the Streets, represented by founder Michael Cox, and City of Moreton Bay Councillor Adam Hayne. Just some quick stats on the City of Moreton Bay homeless.
So someone vested in making as much money as possible off properties, someone with a likely government contract to feed the homeless, because it's illegal to do these things off your own bat. People have been arrested feeding people in the past. And then a councillor from the council who is administering your land. So three interests that have no real link to any faith in your Anglican foundation of this Christian Commonwealth. No connection to any faith here. No Catholic Church, no Uniting Church, no one that actually takes those Centrelink people and gives out food parcels from Centrelink. There's a very big disconnection here in reality from your ministers that have got no idea, because all they know is corporate Australia, while they don't go down into the gutter and mingle with people and see what's on the ground, to be able to look at it and look up the chain and think, this is evil. This is really, really evil. The way they manipulate money markets internationally, over and above a silver dollar, equal in value across the world, because it's 1 ounce. This is very evil in that they've manipulated the people into a situation of poverty because of that silver dollar. We can see all of this coming to fruition because of corporate Australia, which has no faith or spirit in it, no spirit of the Anzac, no spirit of God, no spirit of the unity of all nations, all tongues, no revelation of that Constitution being founded in Christ. So we start to see corporate Australia is responsible.
The number of clients financially assisted with payments for short-term emergency accommodation grew by almost 280% from 2018 to 2023. And there are 2,517 people on the public housing wait list in this just one local government area in Queensland. Deputy Speaker, I suspected the 1.5 hours allotted for this forum would not be enough, and unfortunately I was correct. We had only managed to discuss the issues and barely touch on solutions, which was the main objective. So I'll be holding a second event in November that will focus on solutions to the problems that we raised at this first forum.
1.5 hours. 1.5 hours. That's all they could put aside for Queensland homeless. 1.5 hours to put it off till the end of November. And then it's Christmas time. Who's going to feed all those homeless during Christmas, Minister? Are you going to hand out the food? Or are those churches you forgot to invite to your little forum, your little corporate forum? So we see some stats here, and it relates to the very hard up. And most of these people will be disabled, old, aging, elderly. They'll be down the bottom rung here. And they're the people that sort of deserve to have some sort of cheap housing. When we look at the rest of the country, they're being screwed over by people that own multiple homes themselves while they watch their constituents go homeless. So we can see a big separation here in that they don't even know what's going on the ground because they can only see their office walls. And that's the reality we speak of. So the stats here really relate to the bottom rung. So they're not addressing the greater problem at all.
We heard from Janice, a local 74-year-old who shared her story, which was for many years she had been renting a granny flat from a couple at the back of their property.
So we don't know this lady's background. We won't even try and investigate it. But what we can say is that the elderly in this country should be in their own homes, ones that they established for their children. This is the thing that Australians have lost touch with, handing property down to live in for generations. This happens with farmers that are now being screwed by the federal government because of some sort of usufruct over agriculture. You have a world of consumers that are totally dependent on the simple chains of supply. They can't minimize. So we're losing this connection to a lineage in things. A lineage in things. Where a 74-year-old lady has to live in the granny flat behind someone else's house.
The couple have now sold and the new owners can't rent it to her. Janice is a single woman on a pension. She doesn't even own a car. She approached the State Housing Department and was told, sorry, we have nothing available. I asked the real estate agent how the private rental market was, and she said they have over 1,000 properties on their rent roll, and there are at the moment 3 up for rent, and at the inspections on these properties, over 40 families are turning up. Not one of them is under $700 per week rent. Janice said she was now looking for a street corner or a tree to sleep under.
So you have all this war going on. You have all these protests going on. You have all this tanting going on. You have all these people that are willing to speak up for it. You have all this immigration going on. But if you asked anybody if they were willing to help, they'd say no. And then 74-year-old Janice here is now camping under a tree with no belongings, with no belongings, because the police will come along and take all of her belongings and throw them in the bin. That's what the police have done in the past. That's what the police will do in the future. So Janice will end up in the jail system. Janice will probably die. She's 74 years old. Janice is probably fearful of her own life right now, and no one in the government seems to really care. Now, I remember many, many years ago, I sat down with a very old lady like Janice, who told me she had a choice of going to the supermarket or paying her electricity bill. And at the time, we paid her electricity bill together and took her to the supermarket, because the government had put her in a position where she had to choose a tin of dog food and her electricity bill, or not being able to cook and her food supplies. And this is a decade ago. So when we look at today and we look at the inaction of a government, it's because money masters have them under their thumb. These government officials don't follow the Constitution in the lineage of your forefathers within the will of God, as defined in its creation. They take it as a corporate instrument and administer it on behalf of a population of children that have been unable to manage it for themselves. There's a stark reality here when this minister is talking about the literal death of your elderly to the parliament, the literal death of your elderly to the parliament. You won't correlate these things because you sit in your homes on couches and these ministers sit in offices looking at office walls, often with whiteboards of notes that come out of their ignorant heads. And this is the stark reality you face in your country when office workers are totally disconnected from what's out there in the real world, in your economy, in your security, in your peace, your ability to live a life of happiness instead of constant fear, distress, and not knowing. This is called anxiety and is actually a form of torture at international law being pushed on you by ministers of the parliaments around your country. This is very evident through the lockdown period where they used jackboots on your streets to keep you in your homes.
Landlords often bear the brunt of the blame for increasing rents, but they've been forced to raise their rents due to the massive increase in the average price of homes. In Caboolture South, the average price has risen from $411,000 in 2019 to $645,000 in 2024.
So did the price of the house go up? Or did your value of your dollar go down? Is it going down further in a Weimar Republic? Was this predicted and warned of you a decade ago? Was this what I brought up and constantly pestered a government about? Is this the constant reality shock that you're all going to have when you realise this has been orchestrated by people going back before Tony Abbott? They have manipulated your employment, they have manipulated your judicial systems, they have created tribunals galore to escape themselves from the actual judicial process of law. They have manipulated your departments, turning them into agencies and corporations galore through ABN numbers so that everything's privatised and out of the hands of government and being run by corporate Australia. Is this the end result of that corporate Australia? winding you all out of everything, while these ministers take back hands in the process, thinking that they're benefiting from the machine when the machine is actually crunching everything down to nothing. This was a stark warning when it was all based on a credit system, and a zombie company would turn up and collapse. And this would be the Kraken sinking everything across the seas of commerce. As all these companies fold down to real value, most of them owe the moneylender, and the moneylender sucks them all in. They borrowed and can't pay back. And the moneylender does this to all the countries around the world, but can't suck them under unless the people forget who they are, where they came from, what they stand for, why they want it, where it came from, and look at who's been manipulating it for their own self-interests and sucking it down a vacuum cleaner of contract hell in projects like Snowy Hydro 2, like the submarine deal. There are some backdoor deals going on all across the country because the money machine allows it to occur at the expense of the population. At the expense of the population. It's like a vampire now trying to suck the blood out of a stone. Only it can't, so it took your sweat instead. This is the end result, in that 74-year-old Janice has nowhere to go.
So therefore, along with the 12 interest rate rises that we've had in the last couple of years, it's just made the mortgage repayment so high that they are forced to increase their rents. The only good news that came out of it, Deputy Speaker, was there was someone who was at the forum that was actually able to find Janice a home. So I'm pleased to say that Janice won't be sleeping under a tree. She'll be sleeping in a bed, and rightly so.
Well, there you go. Janice got a bed. Not because of the government, because someone that was kind enough at the forum who met an old lady that didn't deserve to be on the streets in the first place. And the only reason she even got to that brink was because of this government. And they can say, oh, it's that team and that team. You're all the same team. You all took an oath to work for the Constitution. You all took an oath to work for the people. And in that, you've expended this country out of everything it is on behalf of money men instead of that Constitution, instead of the people and their lineages in the blessing of Almighty God. See, that's not an easy subject to face, is it? When over the lockdowns they shut down all your businesses and kept all their oligarchy businesses open. Where they screwed you all out of your economy and drove their own economy over the top of you in a forced industrial revolution, because your senators and your ministers are unable or incompetent at holding up your Constitution under the blessing of Almighty God, being the lineage of your forefathers in your Anzac. So when we look at this whole entire problem, the financial problem across the entire globe, including your country, was planned in a forced industrial revolution where your emergency services were turned into frontline responders. And they went on the hostile attack against you and started changing all the laws so you couldn't speak up and couldn't unite and couldn't defend. Because you don't know what's going on all the time. And I see it in the comments. Some of you are still completely deluded as to a solution out of this because you haven't realised yet what a defence force is and who's got control of your men. Your defence force is serving foreign interests and willingly doing that bidding and committing war crimes in the action of doing it, like Ben Roberts-Smith in the Brereton report. He thought he served this country, and when he went to court, he realised he served foreign masters, moneylenders, who had a thumb over the top of him with all these Hague and Geneva conventions. And he didn't save the country because your house is worth $1 million plus. No one can afford rent. Homeless has tripled in the last 3 years. Tripled in the last 3 years. And it's the direct responsibility of people like Frydenberg who willingly put your country into $1 trillion debt while playing with money lenders and ignoring the very constitution in which he sits office, under the rules of usufruct, of course. So we look at your homelessness and you're scrambling around like Chicken Little, never being a defender, never standing united in what your forefathers actually left you, and never actually getting the grasp on the fact that this government is an administrator, putting you through a bankruptcy, in an insolvency. Go and look up what a zombie company is. A zombie company is a company that can't pay off its interest and therefore can never pay off the principal of a loan. But what I'm telling you is you're in an indissoluble contract. And if that all collapses because no one can pay anything, the Constitution doesn't dissolve. You end up at zero. And you end up having to start all over again in a line of authority that's true in your forefathers and that constitution. And what I'm trying to make you all aware of is the fact that Albanese's government did this on purpose. Scott Morrison's government set it up so that the Labor government could do this on purpose. Make no mistakes here. They planned to do this. I discovered this 15 years ago. And to all you Aboriginal activists right now, did you turn into their servants and toilet cleaners in the tourism facilities that they set up for you, owned by Chinese interests? So you're going to become the toilet cleaners and the rangers of the parks where they bring all of their elite children to play instead of you. Instead of you. You'll be relegated to the back island where the cleaning quarters are, while all the tourists take the front island and the nice coral beaches and the reefs. I saw that when I worked in it when I was 18. That's what's happening more and more and more across the country while you become the homeless, while you lose everything that was the Crown. That defended all these different faiths around the country, all in one common blessing of Almighty God, in the centre of all those towns and cities across the country that aren't Aboriginal land. They're your land that you're allowing this government to manipulate you out of. And that includes the Aborigine because they got stuck with those mining interests, right? Now we should attack the federal government as to what are all the cooked books doing? What are all the cooked books doing? Can you bring out the old books on the table? And can we stop talking about the Reserve Bank and actually talk about the actual debt on the table? It's a gold debt, isn't it? It's a gold debt, isn't it? Has it been paid off? Is this just a scam? Is this just a pyramid scheme to squeeze everyone out of everything they've got? Is that a crime? What's a monopoly in Coles and Woolworths? What's a monopoly in petrol stations? What's a monopoly in pharmaceuticals? What's a monopoly in so many other things in this country set up by these governments since 1973 under a foreign Great Seal? Under a foreign Great Seal. The Great Seal of Australia has already shown not to be the Great Seal of the Commonwealth of Australia. So it's just pew pew guns by Zionism or papism. And it's not actually law, is it? 75 years of peacekeeping. Pay up. Pew pew, pay up. We'll chase you all over Melbourne. We'll chase you to the King's Domain and we'll shoot the shit out of you there with gas canisters and rubber bullets. Pew 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 pew. We're on the front lines. We're responding. Pew 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 pew. And you're all homeless, not thinking about the actual ground underneath all your feet, while you let these elitist politicians, black and white, manipulate all of you.